Hello you lovely lot, welcome back to the Max Goodwin YouTube channel and a brand new video where today we're going to be taking a look at my reactions to my initial Premier League predictions all the way back on September the 11th, where I uploaded a video basically giving you my predictions for the Premier League season going ahead. They were pretty interesting. I haven't seen the video since it was uploaded, purposely put a bit of distance between myself and it. So these are completely raw reactions from a video created nearly a year ago now. I created it back in August and uploaded it at the beginning of September. So hopefully it's not a bad one. Hopefully they aren't too spicy, the predictions, and hopefully I don't have too many whiffers in there, but we'll have to see how we get on. If you enjoy this kind of content though, don't forget to drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel. We're getting really close to 100 subscribers, so thank you very much for getting me to that position in the first place. But if you want to support the channel, we are on the road to 100 subscribers. I don't know what I'm going to do to celebrate it, but I would greatly appreciate if you would join me on that journey. With all that being said, let's crack into it. I've got some water, I've got my hat on, so I've just had a fresh fez cut. Let's get into it and see how awful my Premier League predictions were for the season just gone. Okay, and I'm pressing play now. Hey up everybody, hope you're doing well. My name is Goodwin, welcome back. Okay, so I think the first thing I'm noticing is how different the quality is in videos. Obviously, nice bit of tracking there. Obviously the camera quality is a lot better between videos. I figured out how to set ISO and things like that, so obviously it's a lot better in that department. Get a bit of that user engagement up. Look at that trim as well. I think that was like my first haircut after the first lockdown. It is so bad. Just not styled it very well. It's a good graphic though. I'm happy with it. I did spend longer than 5 minutes on it, I can assure you that. I spent a good couple of days making that. Okay, I'm going to pause it here. 20th for Aston Villa. Yikes. Let's actually take a quick look at the Premier League table. I predicted Aston Villa to finish 20th and they finished 11th. I didn't actually expect Ollie Watkins to hit the ground running as well as he did. I didn't think Emi Martinez would be as good as he was actually in the end over the season. Obviously I named him my goalkeeper of the year in the video, which is up in the iCard above. Jack Grealish, of course, had a really good season as well, despite missing like 10 games for injury. I think he created the most chances, so understandably, I would say it's a bit of a flop, the first one. It's disappointing actually, because I thought that, I thought I'd got it right there. I thought they were nailed on to go down after just escaping the drop. I didn't really rate Dean Smith at the time. I still don't really think he's that, like the best coach in the league or anything, but I whiffed that one. I'll admit I whiffed that one, definitely. Let's replay it then. In my opinion, they are easily the worst team in the league. Although the signing of Ollie Watkins for about £30 million literally confirmed today. The worst team in the league. Oh, my camera's can't focus. I'm pausing that there. I said they were the worst team in the league. Oh no, how did I think that? How did I think that they were that bad? I mean, they were pretty bad last season for like 3/4 of the season, but Sheffield United this season were awful. West Brom, one of the worst teams I've ever seen in my entire life. Christ above, I can't believe I said they were that bad. Right, let's keep going. There we go, bang on, got 19th correct. West Brom did finish 19th in the Premier League this season. They were relegated. I'm happy with that. Yeah, happy with that prediction. You probably didn't hear that there as well because I was talking over the top of myself, but I paused it there. I did say that Mateus Pereira was going to have a really good season as well, which he did. I think he'll probably stay in the league next season. I wouldn't be surprised if like a Southampton or a Brighton went in for him. I think he'd be really good additions to their team. Grady Dean Garner didn't quite hit the ground running as much, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with that prediction, to be fair. Let's move forward then to maybe here. Talk a bit about who I've got in 18th place. In 18th, we have got Crystal Palace. Okay. And speaking of perennial yoga club, I had Crystal Palace getting relegated in 18th. Obviously, that's wrong. They finished. They did finish pretty solid mid-table in 14th. I think they were very lucky to do that. They didn't seem to know how to attack for the majority of the season. They are losing a lot of players in the summer as well, so I think that's fairly fair to expect them to do pretty badly this season. I don't like. Obviously, they didn't get relegated or anything, but at the same time, they weren't very good. And I think that's a fair expectation for that team to get relegated. They weren't very good, to be fair. Let's move forward a little bit then. I haven't whiffed it too much, to be fair, other than that Villa prediction. Palace, I thought, would get relegated. They were pretty much in and around that 5 most of the season. West Brom got relegated, obviously, so that's fine. And Villa getting relegated, probably one of the worst predictions I've ever made on anything. This is why I don't bet on anything, why I'm not a betting man, because who would predict that now, realistically? Come on. Right, I'm going to go forward to about... Okay, I'm going to go forward to about 4 minutes, just so that we can speed things up a little bit and take a look at the table for sort of the lower ends of the table. So, 16th, I've got Newcastle. Okay, so I'm talking about Newcastle here. The music in the background's horrible, isn't it? I'm so sorry, that was the music I stuck in. I'm glad I've gone for more like lo-fi stuff recently. But yeah, I'm talking about Newcastle here and their likelihood to survive. Take a look at the table in a second when it cuts back eventually. Okay, so I'm going to pause it here because there's a few teams we can talk about here. So 17th, I've got Fulham. That's a fairly reasonable prediction. They finished 18th in the end, just missing out on relegation. It was pretty much between themselves, Newcastle and Brighton, as to who would take that final relegation slot. And I don't think that's an awful prediction. I backed Zambo and Gisa and Lookman and Harrison Reed. They've got a really talented core of a squad. Really a team that shouldn't be getting relegated realistically. And I do think their shortcomings were managerial wise, and also that they didn't get likes of like Tosin Adarabioyo and Joaquim Anderson until towards the end of the window, where they were already a couple of games in and had already kind of fluffed their chances of saving their season. 16th, I had Newcastle. That's pretty fair. Let's take a look where they finished quickly. They finished 12th after a pretty good sort of final few games of the season. I think they won they won 3 out of their last 5 at the back end of the season, so that's understandable. They finished 12th. I would say that's probably more realistic, between 16th and 12th. So I'm not disappointed with that one whatsoever. That's a pretty good result. The next one, though, is West Ham, 15th. Let's take a listen. We're at 436. West Ham. And if they can get the best out of Haller and Fornals this season, we could be looking at a team pushing mid-table. I don't think it's going to be anything more than that. Okay. I do think Mikel Antonio has shown that he is able to play up front in quite a high volume and high impact system. And I think he's shown that he's... I don't know what high impact and high volume means, but... So, I think he can do it for West Ham as well. I did back Antonio at least. Former high impact and high volume. David Moyes, to be able to at least assemble some kind of Everton 2.0. I can already see Pavel Souček being the modern day Marouane Fellaini. It's there in front of us for us to see. To be fair, that is exactly what happened this season. Pavel Souček. Pavel Souček, Thomas. Who's Pavel Souček? Did I call him Pavel Souček? I called him Pavel Souček, so that's brilliant. Thomas Souček, his actual name, I'll call him by his actual name, did basically turn into Fellaini for the majority of this season. He was in the box an absolute menace going forward, not just from set pieces, but also in open play. I think he got 10 or 11 goals in the league this season. For the majority of it, though, it wasn't that good of a prediction. West Ham finished 6th in the end, finishing in the Europa League spots behind Leicester, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United and Man City. And other than a pretty ropey run in at the back end of that sort of back 10 games of the season, they probably could have finished in the Champions League spaces, honestly. Like, to finish again above Tottenham, Arsenal and Everton this season is a fantastic achievement for Everton. Probably one of their best finishes in the Premier League, certainly under the Golden Sullivan administration. Fantastic season for them. I'm so happy for them as well. West Ham fans really deserve a good season. Not that to sound entitled or anything, but they really do deserve a good season. So I'm happy they finished there. So as you can see, I'm just going to sort of blitz through the next few teams as we get into the mid-table. Because there's not really a lot to say about a lot of these teams. And next up, speaking of which, we have 14th place and Brighton. And I think this could be another solid, if not unspectacular, season for Brighton. I do like their manager, Graham. Right, I'll pause it there. I mean, Brighton lose lol is kind of a bit of a meme on the internet, particularly in the stats community, how Brighton quite infamously always seem to dominate their opponents on XG and then somehow lose like 3-0 or something. I think on expected points they were like 6th this season. Sorry, a little voice crack there. I think they were like 6th. And obviously finished, I think, like 15th, 16th. I predicted them to finish 14th, which is pretty fair. And I think if they signed a better striker in the summer, someone who can actually finish their chances, or Mopay came in some form, I think they're very solidly a mid-table team. I think Potter's one of the best managers in the league at the moment. Genuinely had a very underrated campaign still. Some people still think he's, writing him off and stuff, but no, I think he's had a great campaign. Let's keep going then. 13th, we have got Leeds United returning to the Premier League. I'm not a Leeds fan, but it's actually really good to see them back in the Premier League. And I really, really love Marcelo Bielsa. I think he's a really, really good manager. I think he's turned them into a genuinely really exciting team to watch. We've got some really interesting players such as Pablo Hernandez, Patrick Bamford as well. And I think, it could be I'm going to pause it there. Season. It's not. I'm not wrong. I think I made some very good points there. Marcelo Bielsa is a bit of a maverick. Weird things can happen in his seasons. Bamford obviously finished as, I think, the second highest scoring English player in the Premier League. I don't know why I said Pablo Hernandez, because he didn't actually play that much. Rafinha, Jack Harrison, Matthias Klick had a really good season. Rodrigo came into some form at the back end of the season, which sort of coincided where they sort of bounced from mid-table up towards the Europa League places. A really good season for Leeds. I take my hat off to them. They did a lot better than I thought they would, and I still thought they would do really well. So I think that says quite a lot about my expectations and how well they actually did in the end. So credit to Leeds. Fantastic season. Really good to see them back as well. Even as a Forest fan, it's great to see them up there. They're a huge team who deserve all the credit that they get. 12th, I have got the last season Premier League new boys, Sheffield United. I do think they were a little bit lucky to finish as high as they did, although I do think they're an exceptionally well... Oh my God, no. Oh, Max, what have you done? Oh, dear me. So, 12th, Sheffield United. How about them Blades? Obviously finished rock bottom of the table after a horrendous start. Their first half of the season was awful, and I feel awful for them because a big part of that was the injury to Jack O'Connell. I think he was the big linchpin in that defence. I think it shows about how valuable he is, and I think he did his knee at the beginning of the season or in pre-season, so that obviously didn't help. Overall, a pretty disappointing campaign from Sheffield United, although I think they're in a bit of a transition at the moment. Obviously, Chris Wilder left partway through the season, and I think whoever it is in charge of them at the moment. I think he's doing an alright job. It'd be interesting to see who they get in charge, because I think they go for more of a director of football and first team coach model, very European style model under their new ownership. So it's a shame to see them drop out. Sheffield United fans are amazing. Sheffield United's an amazing club, and I hope they bounce back. I really hope they bounce back. Let's get into 11th place. Making some really good points there. I've just paused it again. Making some really good points. Firstly, talking about how important the defence was. I mentioned how outside the top sort of 6-7 last season, they were one of the best defensive units in what helped them finish mid-table. Obviously, the injury to Jack O'Connell sort of helped that fall apart. I then mentioned about how the lack of offensive quality in the team. It's exactly true. They didn't have a potent enough forward. I thought Rhian Brewster would replace that, but obviously didn't. I then talked a bit about post-shot expected goals. Now I know a little bit more about it, I can call it what it is. Post-shot expected goals, basically the difference in goals conceded compared to what the team should have conceded in goals. And Dean Henderson, his post-shot expected goals was like +7 last season, saved 7 extra goals than he probably should have, which is incredible for a goalkeeper. I think Aaron Ramsdale's had a really rough time of it, going off the back of the relegation with Bournemouth, getting relegated again, although he has made the England 33 somehow. I think it's disappointing for Sheffield United that Dean Henderson was probably the most important player, as was Jack O'Connell, and they lost both of them. So understandable why they got relegated at this stage. I'll pause that. In 11th place, we've got Burnley, and just like their style of play, they are going to be solid. Not particularly spectacular, but pretty safe this season. Yeah, I mean, Burnley finishing 11th is a pretty poor prediction on my part. I think they finished just above the relegation zone in the end, 17th. So probably one of my worst predictions so far, I would say. It's obviously disappointing to see that Burnley are probably a bit of a dying star, in the sense of that you can see they're kind of hanging on a little bit for dear life, just like the team I'll get into in a little bit. It's disappointing because I love Sean Dyche, the manager. I love his approach. I love the way that Burnley play. But at the same time, I think they're a couple of seasons away from relegation potentially because the team's just getting too old, and there just seems to be no desire to invest in replacing a lot of the older members of that team, particularly in defence and in the midfield. I think eventually the age of the team and the lack of investment will catch up with them, so not necessarily a bad sort of point there. I'm going to skip forward a little bit more. We're going to talk about the next team. 10th place was Southampton. Another kind of dying star in the sense of I think Hassan Hootel is holding together this team with kind of like silly glue, like PVA glue. There are a lot of issues in that Southampton team at the moment. I think this is probably one of my worst ones as well, thinking Southampton will finish top half. You'd have thought after the start of the season they had, where they were like top for a couple of weeks towards the sort of Christmas period, they're going to have a great season, but it was disappointing on their part. I think injuries really plagued them. Injuries to Danny Ings, Carl Walker-Peters, two very essential members of the first team. Defensively, there just really wasn't a lot of cohesion, although I think Yannick Vestergaard is actually a fairly decent centre-back. It was disappointing for Southampton because they really did fall off, and I have a bit of a soft spot for Southampton in terms of their transfer policy. They always play really good football, but that ain't it this season. Really not a good season. We're going to skip forward a little bit more to 9 minutes 45, and we are going to talk about the next couple of teams, hopefully, when this loads. So we're going to talk about Everton, finishing 9th now. In 9th, we have Everton, an excellent manager, two impressive signings in the form of Allen and James Rodriguez, the latter of which was signed for just £20 million. I know his wages are going to be quite high, but the fact that he was going for £20 million. Yeah, I think Everton finishing 9th is a fairly good prediction. They finished 10th in the end, so fairly respectable, a mid-table finish. At one point, they, again, much like Southampton, they looked like they were fighting towards the European places, but I think the injuries and lack of depth in certain positions, particularly in defence, caught up with them a little bit in the back end of the season. The issues with Jordan Pickford as well, not being a particularly good goalkeeper, also didn't help particularly well with that. Also mentioned to talk about James Rodriguez and Alan. I thought they had really good seasons. James Rodriguez in particular had a really, really good season. I think because he didn't get a lot of goals or assists, people didn't talk about how good he was. Everything went through him. You could see when he was not in that team, they had no creativity, no spark, no movement from midfield. Same with Alan when he was injured. You could just tell when he wasn't in the team, and I think that's a real sign of a really important player to a team, that when they're not in there, they were considerably worse without James or Alan. So I would say that's a fairly good one. It's obviously not going to be one in the win column, but it's a good prediction, I would say. So let's move into the next people to talk about. If we have Leicester City, I do think the fact that they're playing Europa League football this season could actually stretch their squad quite badly. It's the first time they've played European football since 16-17, and I think that season showed after they won the title that they just didn't have the squad depth, and I still don't think that they have the squad depth. I paused it there because I think that's actually quite an interesting conversation I was having there about Leicester. I predicted them to finish 8th. They actually finished 5th and won the FA Cup. And my issue with them was because they were playing Europa League football, they would struggle to sort of compete on multiple fronts. And actually, I think they were worse when they didn't have multiple competitions to compete in for some reason. I talked about the depth in the squad. That obviously is a whole issue in itself, and that is, in my opinion, why they sort of fell off at the back end of the season. Injuries to sort of more crucial players, and also bigger teams picking up form at the back end of the campaign. But that was a weird one, that when they were in the Europa League, they were really good, and I don't know why. They were just a bit of an anomaly. But overall, an amazing season for Leicester, winning the FA Cup, finishing 5th. You could argue not finishing in the Champions League spots is a bit of a down point because it was the same as what happened last season, but to have an FA Cup in there, to have gone pretty deep in the Europa League, to have really fought for those Champions League places to the last minute, I don't think that's a bad season whatsoever. I was on a weird kick at the time as well, where I was talking a lot about like relegated players and who they should sign. I don't know why. I think I was on one of them like weird football manager kicks. But all three players I mentioned there, Chris Mepham would have been a really good defensive coverage signing. David Brooks, I think, would have been a great upgrade on Ayuso Perez. And Ibrahima Sangare, I mentioned, who's kind of a bit of a Voldemort character because everyone suggests him for teams. They've actually gone out and agreed a fee for Boubacar Soumaré from Lille. So not really the same players, but similar deep-lying midfielders that I think would have offered similar qualities and cover for Wilfred Ndidi's injury. So yeah, overall pretty happy with that prediction for Leicester finishing 8th. So we're going to skip forward a little bit again, just because this video is 20 minutes long and I've already been going for like nearly half an hour. In 7th, for I think the 3rd Premier League season straight, we've got Wolves. They had the 2nd best defence in the league last season, which is extremely impressive. That's a pretty bad one. That is a pretty bad one. Wolves finishing 7th is pretty bad considering they finished 13th at the end. Although again, I think there were some really important points made in there. The lack of expansiveness did really cost them a lot this season. When Nuno did try and transition to a 4 at the back, it just didn't work because he didn't really have the personnel to sort of execute that. The lack of Raul Jimenez for the majority of the season, obviously because of that fractured skull he suffered earlier in the campaign. I kind of mentioned there that how Fabio Silva's kind of brought in as a replacement because they were expecting him to go to Juventus. And that kind of did happen this season with the injury. Fabio Silva took on the mantle for the majority of the season, obviously Willian Jose as well. And they just couldn't reproduce what Jimenez brings to that team. Speaking of, we were speaking earlier about important players in Everton. Raul Jimenez is probably one of the most important players in the league for his team, I would suggest. And yeah, a big reason as to why they finished so low was because of his lack of fitness due to his head injury earlier in the season. So this is probably one of my worst ones as well, alongside Southampton and Burnley and Sheffield United. So yeah, bit of a whiffer there. Well, hopefully we can improve in the top 6. I have a feeling though it's going to be pretty ugly in places. In 6th, we have Arsenal in Mikel Arteta's first full season in charge. I do think on the field and in the key metrics, they're going to really, really improve. Defensively, they already look like they're really improving. They've got William Saliba coming back from loan. They've got Bellerin
Well done,
looking
Max.
like they're going to be fit again.
Well done. That's a very good point you made there.
So that's Arsenal finishing 6th. Arsenal actually finished 8th, so not too far off. I think had they had, a decent start to the season, they probably would have finished 6th. And I did mention about how they could become one of the best defensive units in the league this season. If we look at goals against here, Arsenal conceded 39, which makes them the 4th best defence in the league, third or 4th best defence in the league overall. So can't complain with that whatsoever. That was a very astute, observation there. And I did talk about how the lack of creativity from number 10 would be the issue, that Arteta probably would create a very functional system, which he has, that 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3 kind of thing that he started playing before, again, he started messing with the 3 at the back, was working. But their only issue was there's a lack of creativity in the midfield that Smith Rowe kind of alleviated a little bit, and Ødegaard has relieved a little bit when he came in at the start of his loan period. But again, they're still having issues with. I think if they brought in a Buendia, who seems to be the biggest link that they're with at the moment, they absolutely could jump up to being a 6th place team, because I think they had the core of a really good team there. I think, fullbacks are pretty decent, although I'd probably look at replacing Bellerin, maybe a defensive midfielder just because of the fitness issues with Partey and Xhaka. Other than that, though, I'm not complaining with that whatsoever. A pretty decent guess there. Let's keep going. In 5th and taking the final Europa League space, we have got Tottenham. It looks like, judging by the Project Restart period of the season, that Harry Kane is looking to be back at his peak fitness and fit and firing again.
I'm pretty happy with that. Tottenham finished 7th. I predicted them to finish 5th, so not that far off. Similar sort of situation to Arsenal. I spoke about how in front of goal they would have a really good season and that Harry Kane looked back to his best, which he absolutely does. Top goal scorer and top assister in the league, which we'll get into in a second. So I'm very, very happy with that sort of prediction. I also talked about the defensive issues that the team had. Obviously, Alderweireld probably was the only decent centre-back at the club at the moment. Rodon had a decent season. Sanchez just seems to have disappeared off the face of the planet, and Eric Dyer is not a very good defender at all, not a very good midfielder either. I think Reguilon and Aurier or Doherty on the right-hand side, whoever's been playing there, have had okay seasons, okay spells during the season, but yeah, overall it was the lack of defence that really cost them Champions League football, which is exactly what I'm saying here. So very happy with that. A very, very good prediction. Very happy with that overall.
Taking the first Champions League spot, we've got Manchester United. And I think another UCL qualification and maybe a good cup run, or even a good run within the Champions League, would single another solid season for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. They're still in the running for Jadon Sancho, who got over 30 goal contributions in the league alone.
Pausing that there, because I think that was not the best prediction in the world. Man United obviously finished second, closest rivals to Manchester City in terms of winning the title this season. I would argue this has probably been their best season post Ferguson. I think that's a fairly okay claim to make. Finishing on 74 points, only about 10 behind Manchester City in second place. So it's definitely a recoverable distance between first and second, although you'd expect Man City to be back in the 90s next season. So I think the big problem they had was that they just were dropping points too often against the smaller teams when they should have been killing them off, which is a really cliche issue, but something very much addressable and that they could very much have dealt with pretty easily. I mentioned how Donny van der Beek was one of the more important signings they made. Obviously, he didn't really kick on at all, but I did mention that at least they'd had some depth in there, which they did have at least at spells during the campaign. Obviously, the signing of Edinson Cavani as well was an absolute mega one. I didn't even think he would register that he would contribute anything really, but I would argue he's had one of the better seasons for Manchester United signings from the summer. So overall, I'm pretty disappointed with my prediction, but it should be a very positive season for Manchester United, especially if they go out and make a couple of good depth signings in important positions, maybe a centre-back, defensive midfielder and a right-sided winger. I think they're definitely a title challenging team then, and they have the quality and depth in those positions to challenge in other competitions as well. So good season for Man United, not my best prediction though. In third, we have Chelsea, which could be a really, really exciting season for them with the signings of Hakim Ziyech, Kai Havertz, Thiago Silva, Timo Werner and Malang Sarr. So I'm pausing it there to talk a bit about Chelsea. I predicted them to finish third. They finished fourth in the end. Not an issue that. I didn't expect them to sack Frank Lampard, honestly. I thought he would have another pretty solid season, then maybe get rid of him at the end of the season when Tuchel was available. I did feel like Tuchel was a fairly reasonable signing for them to make, and I think they were probably justified in bringing him in at the time. And he's obviously had a fantastic campaign, FA Cup final, Champions League final, top four in the Premier League, having been sort of mid-table when he came in. So obviously that's a pretty good sign of things to come from the German. Overall, pretty happy with that. I did speak about as well how defensively they'd improved a lot, which they have, especially under Tuchel. Thiago Silva's signing has also bolstered that, a bit of leadership at the back that they didn't really have with their other defenders. So overall, pretty happy with that prediction, with Chelsea finishing third. Obviously, they finished fourth in real life. Pretty reasonable prediction, I would say. In second, we have got Liverpool, and this is really going to annoy some Liverpool fans, and I just cannot wait to see all the feedback on that. Liverpool did win the league last season, and they were probably the best team in the country, but Man City and Chelsea... So I'm going to pause it there to talk about Liverpool just before we get into Manchester City obviously finishing in top position. Again, I think much like a couple of the other top six predictions, I made some really valid points there despite not getting the position correct. Manchester City and Chelsea did improve their squads a lot more than them, and even Manchester United and Tottenham to a certain extent. I think Liverpool's only real important signings were Diogo Jota and Thiago, both of whom have had pretty decent campaigns to be fair, but have had injury problems. I think I was right to say that the front line was another year older. Mane's had a bad season. Firmino has had a pretty bad season, although a decent end to it. Salah's had a really good season, obviously finished second in the Golden Boot, but really was the only production of firepower. And obviously the lack of signings in defence, other than Tsimikas, who I kind of very crudely talked about then, really cost them. Obviously the Van Dijk injury, the Gomez injury, the Matip injury has derailed what was starting out as a pretty promising campaign. They were top at certain points during the season early on, and I did think we were going to get a pretty good title race going down the line, but unfortunately the injuries to their defenders over the course of the season. But a big shout out to Nat Phillips and Reece Williams. They deserve a lot of credit for holding that defence together over the course of the season. Not really having had a lot of senior football over the last couple of years since joining the club, or coming through the club, and still having performed quite well and moderately well in places. And Fabinho as well deserves a lot of credit, playing as possibly one of the best centre-backs in the league and one of the best defensive midfielders in the league during the same campaign. So fair play to Fabinho for that as well. So let's crack into the final place then, which is Manchester City. I predicted finishing top of the table, and obviously, of course, they did in real life, so let's hear what I've got to say on it. And finally, in first, we have Manchester City. I think that they are without a doubt going to win the Premier League this season. I pause it there. I'm happy with that. Obviously, I predicted them to finish in the right position. That's a good start. And again, there were some really valid points made in there. The signings of Ake and Torres in midfield and defence, respectively, allowed them to play slightly weaker teams in certain league games, which has then led to them qualifying for the Champions League final this season, winning the Carabao Cup, getting to the FA Cup semi-final. Overall, those signings provided the depth that they just didn't have last season, and obviously they're hugely important despite how limited their minutes have been this season, to the overall cohesion of the team and the depth in the positions that they play. I mentioned also about the finance and all that important stuff, but also about the start to the season. I guess kind of, in a way, predicted they were going to have a bad start to the season. Laporte and Mahrez were both diagnosed with coronavirus as I was recording this video, and I'd found out just prior, and they missed the first few weeks of the season, which sort of coincided with that draw to Leeds, that defeat 5-2 to Leicester, sort of the poor starts of the season that they really bounced back from in the second half, and actually more than second half, probably in the sort of second 2/3 of the season. And obviously they romped to the title, 12 points clear of Manchester United in second. I didn't think Ruben Dias was going to be as good as he was in the end. Obviously, again, another example of a defender coming in and offering them another option in that position, which meant they could rotate a little bit at certain stages. Obviously, Eric Garcia played in there as well. Overall, pretty good. Very happy with that prediction of Manchester City finishing first. Let's get into, finally, my three little side predictions on the side: top goal scorer, player of the season, and promotion from the Championship. So as you can see from this little section of video, I've just brought them all up just so we can wrap them up nice and quickly. So top scorer, I had Harry Kane. Obviously, Harry Kane finished top goal scorer in the league on the final day on 23 goals. So very happy with that prediction. Obviously got that right. And obviously finished on top assister as well. So fantastic campaign for the Englishman. Player of the year, I had Kevin De Bruyne for a back-to-back header of PFA Player of the Year. And I think had he played the entire season, had he not had that injury halfway through, he probably would have won it. He would have definitely won the assist award, and he probably would have finished in one of the top goal scoring positions because he had a quite good season for a goal playing striker for large swathes of the season. My personal player of the year was Ruben Dias, so he was a Manchester City player, obviously helping them win the title, so that's not necessarily an awful prediction. But we do have to talk about them promoted teams a little bit. So I predicted Watford, Forest and Brentford to get promoted to the Premier League. Now, ignore Forest being in there because obviously I'm going to say Forest. I'm a Forest fan. Obviously, I'm going to say they're going to get promoted. I said it in my awards video that they were going to get promoted this season. I'll probably say in my Premier League predictions this season they'll get promoted again as well. They're just in there anyway. Brentford are in the playoff final against Swansea at the weekend, so that should be quite interesting actually to see if they do take that final slot. And Watford have been promoted to the Premier League, so again, that's not a bad prediction whatsoever. Watford did go up. Forest didn't go up, obviously, but of course I'm going to say that. And Brentford are on the cusp of going up should they beat Swansea, which is very likely to happen. I think they're a better team than Swansea. So overall, some good predictions in there, I would say. So overall, I think I got two right, which isn't very good. Two specifically correct positions in the Premier League this season. One being Manchester City winning the title, the other being West Bromwich Albion finishing 19th, which I wouldn't even call particularly the hardest predictions in the world. So overall, I didn't do very well. I would say, though, that a lot of really valid points were made in that video. I got some really good predictions in there. I talked about how important the signings were to Man City and Chelsea in finishing in the top four, how Liverpool would struggle because of their lack of signings. I talked a lot about how certain managers impressed me a lot and that would lead to good seasons, which obviously Brighton and Leeds had respectively. I did make some real whiffers though. I would say Aston Villa finishing 20th is probably my worst one. Sheffield United finishing 12th as well. If you swap them round, then you would be talking about a really solid Premier League table there, but unfortunately, it's just the two correct out of 20 overall. Let me know how you got on in the comments down below with your predictions. Did you get more than me? You probably did, honestly. Did you make any whiffers of predictions going into the season last year? Let me know in the comments down below. And also let me know what your predictions are for the season coming up ahead. My video will probably be coming out around the August sort of time. It'll be after the Euros probably, where I'll probably do a similar sort of video to this, talking about 20th to first and then like top goal scorer, player of the year and promoted. Obviously Forest is going to be one of them finishing first in the Championship, of course. But stay tuned for that obviously in the next couple of months. If you did enjoy the video, please don't forget to drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel, turning on notifications. I did just want to talk about one last thing, and that was just the improvement in quality in the videos. Just a little pat on the back for myself. You can see the quality change in videos. Obviously it's investment on my own behalf in lighting and in time and learning how to edit a lot better, but that kind of is me trying to say thank you for sticking by the channel, because this isn't exactly the highest quality video ever uploaded, this one, and I hope that the quality is improved
as the season's progressed and as we are to here now. So thank you so much for sticking by the channel over the course of the season. That though does wrap up this video. If you want to follow me on social media, my Twitter and Instagram handle is MaxDJGoodwin for both. It's the best place you can find out about new videos that go live, and we can talk about how awful our Premier League predictions were at the beginning of the season. That though does conclude this video, so until next time, I'll catch you later.